I love the 90s music. I mean, we're both the same age, so we grew up listening to just, I mean, to me, awesome music, raw music. I mean, that's what it feels like. It was raw. It was like they didn't care if any. It was the time of making new IPs. I mean, I'm kind of comparing it to movies because the 90s movies, people were like, I'm going to do something new. I'm going to try something new. And that's kind of how music felt, where now it's like, we know what works in the algorithms, so we're going to stick to that. And that doesn't feel natural anymore. And I think it's bigger than music because it's movies too. It's all kind of art in general, right? And the 90s felt like this. I hesitate on the word Wild West, but it really felt like people were like, I don't care if you like my music or not. This is my music. And it worked. It was good. And people were like, yeah, raw, authentic music. I love that about the 90s.
Yeah, man. It was a point where like counterculture was the mainstream, ironically enough.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to watch the way rock has gone through its phases, how stylistically it's obviously very different than it was 20 years ago. You still have a lot of great musicians that are holding on to, traditional roots, and a lot of classic artists that are
who give me some.
So I would say like Wolfgang Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen's kid just put out his new record. Phenomenal record. And obviously growing up playing in his dad's band, he played with Tremonti too. Mark Tremonti was the lead guitarist from Creed, who phenomenal guitarist, actually, just never cared for the band. But Wolfgang, really just this phenomenal classic rock sound that's true to form. You get to hear a lot of AC/DC, a lot of his dad's band, the good guitar stuff though, none of the like jump synth garbage. But yeah, you have these artists that are, like I said, staying true to form, I guess would be a way to put it with the genre. And then you have artists like Dee Snider just put out a new record last week, and it is
Dee Snider.
Dee Snider, he's 66, and he supposedly had retired. And with everything that was going on with COVID, and he's cool. Like, I really like his perspective on the record. He's definitely the type of guy that's like, hey, 80%, like those of you who, are tired of watching the right and the left, the 10% on each side scream at each other, this record is for you. And so it's got good energy. I like where his head's at.
Cool.
And it's one of those things where, there's obviously with everything that's gone on in the last couple of years, there's going to be a lot of albums, and I'm pretty critical of this. There's a lot of albums that are going to take on this ephemeral character. They're going to be very specific to like a time period. And I just think because of that, contextually, they're not going to age well. This is not going to be a period in time that any of us are going to like reflect on with any fondness.
You got that right.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like, like 10 years from now, it's like, oh yeah, let me throw on that angry COVID record. No one's going to do that. Which is why I was
angry COVID record.
That's why I was so critical of Van Morrison's new record. It's 28 songs. It's 2 hours and 8 minutes long. All right.
28 songs.
It's 28 songs and 2 hours and 8 minutes long. So do the math there. Like every song is like 4.5 to 5 minutes long.
That's long. That's
it's a content dump. It's like a good album, unless you're setting out to make a double album, which, I mean, whatever. If you want to do that, that's fine. But a good record, in my opinion, it's got about like a solid 45-minute runtime.
Yeah.
10 to 12 songs. A lot of this comes traditionally from just the amount of time that you get on each side of a vinyl record.
Yeah. Right.
So that, that obviously is a big factor, but it is obviously an attention thing and just the pleasure of, being drawn into something for that perfect, 40 to 45-minute period.
Yeah.
That, and the other thing is like, there are half the songs on that record are damn good. They are pretty good, but you get these song titles that are like, why are you on Facebook? And it's a good question because like Facebook is garbage, but so is the song. It's not, when I look at the Van Morrison catalog and everything that he's done over the years, and especially his early work and just how brilliant and how much music that inspired on its own. It's not the type of stuff that I'm used to Van Morrison seeing. So it's not that I disagree with his political viewpoints. And I will say, I will give him kudos that all the album sales from that project, he donated to a fund that was generated for musicians in England that were struggling during COVID because they couldn't perform. So props to Van Morrison for that. Like I don't want to throw him under the bus or drag him down, but it was funny, the opprobrium that I got, like all the negative feedback that was like, you don't like respect him speaking up for your rights to defend your opinion. And I'm like, oh, you mean my defending like my opinion to say that like I don't like this record? So
I could ruffle some feathers right now. Ready?
Yeah.
Look behind you. What poster you got there? Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's overrated.
I knew he was going to go there. This is not the first time I've heard him say that.
I believe it. I mean, I look. I'm not. Look, if you love Bob Dylan, that's great. Bob Dylan, he's he has his strengths, but he has a lot of weaknesses, and a lot of his music I can't even listen to it anymore.
And I'll level with you too. Bob Dylan's one of those guys where, like I would say from the inception of his career, maybe to about 75, ending with the album Desire. Like I'm solid through that period of time.
Yeah.
But he has like his, weird Christian phase, and then just some phases where he just flat out didn't make good records. It's kind of like It's kind of like Prince. Prince put out a new record on Friday, and it's been interesting hearing the feedback because a lot of people are like, this album isn't that great. And what I will say is that it's solid. It's certainly not in the upper echelon of the Prince catalog.
Yeah.
But when you look at, such a prolific artist, but that output towards the end of his life, especially, a lot of stuff wasn't very good. So when I said in the review,
dude, you put out 1,000 songs, you're about to get some goodies in there,
Yeah, and so what I said in that album or in that review is that it's easily one of his best albums in the last 20 years when you consider like all the other stuff that's come out. Okay. But I think the Prince Vault is one of the most fascinating things out there. I mean, no one really knows how much is in there. My big concern with it is so this particular new record, Welcome to America, was something that he recorded in 2010. So the project was put together. They went out on a tour of the same name. Like they were supposed to release the album to correspond with that. And he just never did for whatever reason. It just wasn't up to his standards. And so to get to the point, what I'm really concerned about is how many of these songs are actually organized and, laid out in an album format that was, true to a concept that would have been something he would have been proud of, because he's, very, very critical, very much a stickler. I would just hate to see someone arbitrarily go into that vault and just start arranging Prince songs all willy-nilly and then calling them albums and releasing them. So
Prince is dead though, right?
Yeah, he's been dead for 5 years now, man.
Okay, I thought so. I was like, there's a new Prince album, but then you said it was made in 2010 and it just was never released.
Yeah, okay. And it's going to be something I think with Bowie's a guy that's done it as well. So, two of my favorite performers of all time, dead within about 3 months of each other. Like that was easily one of the most devastating periods, like musically as a fan for me. David Bowie was one of my favorites growing up.
Me too. Love David Bowie,
especially physically looking a little different from other kids. Like Bowie was one of those first people that, like, especially when I started getting into rock and roll music, just how different and how squirrely he was sometimes. And I'm just like, like that guy, he rocks it. Whatever he's doing, it's confidence. It's, everything about his persona. I just love what he exuded. So I really miss that guy. I miss Prince a lot. And I think with a lot of artists giving what these two guys have done and what other artists have done after their passing, you're going to see a lot of performers maybe have that vault, see posthumous albums released a lot more. And I think it's a cool thing. Especially, I went to school, did English lit. So it constantly reminds me of so many writers who didn't even become famous until after they were dead. So it's a very common thing. That's the difference there is that these, they obviously have a fan base when they're alive, but you do see a lot of authors traditionally in the past that, their body of work really comes to light after their passing. And so I think it's a cool thing. I think it's a great way to stay relevant as an artist too. I know long after I'm gone, if I had some type of mark or staple, it'd be cool to be able to somehow pass that on and continue it.